Iraq's bloodiest day. Hundreds are killed and injured in Baghdad in one of the worst attacks since the invasion. Massacred in the market, afternoon shoppers are targeted by 6 car bombs. The reprisals begin. Is it now too late to stop the slide into civil war? Tonight, after another dark day in Iraq, we also have an extraordinary report from the United States, where the wife of a soldier killed in the conflict is forcing the nation to reflect on the cost of this war. She's a widow in grief, and the pictures have brought home to America the suffering of military families.
I think what people needed to see was what the families go through when they lose someone at war.
Also tonight, counterfeit cash, the family behind the multi-million-pound forgery racket which threatened the Bank of England. And the Fair Pack Samaritan, how one woman's generosity is saving at least some families from a miserable Christmas.
In London, the tenants whose landlord's been offered £130,000 to install mobile masts. He says he'll only change his mind if they pay him.
Good evening. Even in the dark diary of death since the invasion of Iraq, today's entry was the bloodiest. 6 car bombs went off, one after the other, in a Shiite area of the capital, Baghdad. It caused murder on a massive scale. 160 people dead, nearly 260 injured. Mortars were fired in reprisal into a nearby Sunni area. If it's not already civil war, it's certainly beginning to look like it. And all this as Britain and America consider how to withdraw their troops. We'll be live in Baghdad in just a moment, but first, Harry Smith on the massacre in the marketplace.
Minutes before, it had been a bustling marketplace packed with Shiite families on their daily shop. What it then became was the front line in a war that's tearing Iraq apart. Amid the chaos, frantic efforts to rescue family and friends. Pulled from the wreckage of their cars, they were loaded onto market trolleys. No time to wait, they were carried away along with the produce they'd come here to buy. Today's attacks are among the most deadly the people of Iraq have suffered. They happened in the Shiite stronghold of Sadr City, which is in the east of Baghdad. The first car bomb went off at about 3 o'clock local time. Reports then suggest it was followed by up to 5 other blasts at 15-minute intervals. As many tried to flee the carnage, the sounds of gunfire echoed around the streets, adding to the chaos and panic. Angry crowds flooded into the streets, hurling curses at Sunni Muslims. There is no doubt here that they are to blame. They are dogs, they shouted. Others called for the downfall of the present Iraqi government. A few miles away, yet another attack, this time on the Shia-dominated health ministry. In one of the most audacious raids yet by insurgents, the ministry compound came under sustained rocket and machine gun fire for several hours. It took the arrival of American helicopters to lift the siege. An indefinite curfew has now been imposed on Baghdad, but given the failure of other recent security clampdowns, it will take much more than that to quell the flames of sectarian violence and stop this country sliding into civil war. Harry Smith, ITV News.
Well, I'm joined now by NBC's Tom Aspel, who's live in Baghdad tonight. Tom, a desperate day. The problem is there doesn't seem to be a way out of this violence.
That's right, Mark, and I think today's violence, many people here fear that it's sure to trigger a wave of reprisal killings. Now, that curfew cannot last forever, and when it lifts, I think people are afraid that the death squads will be out in force. Many of the Shia militiamen have infiltrated the Iraqi security forces, and we've seen in the past that they have been active in kidnapping and murdering Sunni Muslims inside Baghdad and in other areas of Iraq. Now, it may also trigger a large movement of people. Now, according to the UN, more than 3,000 people are killed here every month. but more than that, are moving from one area to another, seeking safety amongst their own. Sunni moving to Sunni areas, Shia moving to Shia areas. And in the middle of all this, the coalition forces, they have been urging the government of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to disarm the militias, but so far he's been unwilling and unable to do so. So the coalition forces may well find themselves not just fighting insurgents, but refereeing a civil war here in Baghdad, Mark.
All right, Tom, thank you very much indeed. That's NBC's Tom Aspel, live from Baghdad. The sense of loss in Baghdad tonight is immense, but it's a sense of loss that extends far beyond Iraq. Today in America, it is Thanksgiving, a time for families and for togetherness. But across the United States, nearly 3,000 men and women will be missing from the celebrations, soldiers killed in Iraq. One of them was Second Lieutenant Jim Cathy, so there will be little to celebrate at his widow's home in Colorado, just outside Denver. Our correspondent John Irvine went to meet her and the baby he never knew for tonight's special assignment.
Home for Thanksgiving, as American as apple pie. Welcome home! A joyful return from Iraq that television cameras were allowed to record. But there are other homecomings.
I heard my mom crying. The first thing I asked him was, "Is he okay?" Just shook his head and said no.
One of the returning soldiers the Pentagon does not want America to see. A photograph so rare it helped win 2 Pulitzer Prizes. The airline passengers are looking at an officer comforting a pregnant war widow. She's being reunited with her husband in a way that's cruelly different from the way she'd imagined it.
The first thing I saw in my head was Jim walking off the bus to meet me and our son, instead of seeing him come home like that. So,
young Jimmy was named after his dad, but they are a father and son who will never get to know one another. Second Lieutenant James Cathy of the US Marines was killed by a booby trap last year. Mrs. Cathy and her little boy live outside Denver, Colorado, where we met them. A remarkable young woman, she felt she owed it to her husband and to other grieving families to allow the reporting of her agony close up. A local newspaper, the Rocky Mountain News, won 2 of America's top journalism awards for its coverage. Compelling words and pictures. A widow's story. It includes her last night beside her husband.
I felt like could be next to him. Didn't feel right being in a hotel, across town from him.
It was peaceful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was the right thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
4 months after becoming a widow, Mrs. Cathy became a mother.
His birth was bittersweet, I guess. Never loved anything so much as I love my son. Just wishing Dad was there with me.
Do you think about him a lot?
Oh, every minute.
John Irvine, ITV News, Denver, Colorado.
A war widow's memories of her husband killed in Iraq. Now, still to come on the programme, England wide of the mark down under. We're live in Brisbane on day 2 of the Ashes. But first, they produced so many forged notes they could have destabilised the economy. £14 million in total today. 9 members of Britain's biggest forgery gang were sentenced, a gang that involved 4 generations of the same family, including a great-grandmother. Chris Shipp reports.
In a tiny backstreet printing studio, this is what police found. Piles and piles of cash, all in £20 notes and all completely fake. So much money prosecutors say there was enough to threaten the stability of the pound itself.
The level of criminality actually threatened the integrity of the banking system in this country. So the serious nature of this criminality cannot be underestimated.
Among the forgery gang, there were 4 generations of one family, the Bayards, from their unsuspecting great-grandmother, who never knew her sheltered accommodation was used to store some of the notes, to her son Gerald Bayard. The 55-year-old was the second in command. His 41-year-old daughter Tracy was on the production line, and his granddaughter Lena Cole, just 23. An ambulance was called when drama unfolded in the courtroom. Tracy Bayard fainted in the dock as she was told she'd be spending the next 4 years in jail.
I'm very satisfied with the result that happened today. I think it was a fair reflection on the level of criminality involved. As the judge said, it's the largest counterfeit currency operation that's come before the courts, and I think the sentences reflect that.
The gang were driven away tonight after being jailed for a total of 41 years. The 14 million in fake £20 notes made it the largest counterfeiting operation ever uncovered by the Bank of England. And with production on such a scale, anti-fraud officers here have no idea how much of it is still in circulation. That could run into millions, but each and every one of these notes is worthless. Chris Ship, ITV News.
It seems his life is slipping away. It also seems that even now doctors cannot work out what's made the former Russian spy Alexander Litvinenko so desperately ill. Critical, according to London's University College Hospital. Keir Simmons is there this evening. It's been another, day of extraordinary developments, Keir.
That's right, Mark. Tonight, Alexander Litvinenko's family fear they are losing him, and we seem to be losing any chance of establishing what the truth is. Mr. Litvinenko has been unconscious all day. He is on a life support machine, and yet the hospitals say they still don't know what caused this. At first, we thought it might be thallium, then radioactive thallium. Today, in an extraordinary statement, the hospital said it's not either of those, they don't think, but they don't know what it is.
Mr. Litvinenko's condition was not due to a heavy metal, such as thallium. Radiation poisoning is also unlikely. Despite extensive tests, we're still unclear as to the cause of his condition.
Frankly, Mark, today we've got more questions than answers. We don't know what the poison might have been. We don't know who might have administered it. Was it Russian gangs or Russian Secret Service? We don't know where it happened. Was it a sushi bar or in a hotel? Again today, the Russian government said it's nothing to do with them. This story, Mark, began as a mystery. Tonight, it is even more mysterious than ever.
All right, Keir, thank you very much indeed. Now, hundreds of thousands of Lebanese took to the streets of Beirut today in a massive display of both respect and defiance. Respect for the assassinated government minister Pierre Gemayel, defiance towards Syria, who they believe was behind the murder. But so far, at least, there's been no violent backlash. Our Middle East correspondent, Julian Mannion, was in amongst the funeral crowds.
Shortly after noon, the coffins were carried into Martyrs Square. First, the murdered minister Pierre Gemayel, and behind him his slain bodyguard. Pierre, you live in our hearts, the crowd chanted. Some carried placards denouncing Syria, the country these people believe ordered the assassination. Security men were on edge, fearing another attack, even as the Gemayel clan followed the coffins on foot.
In scenes of confusion, the coffin containing the body of Pierre Gemayel is being brought to the cathedral for his funeral. And at this moment, the Christians of Lebanon gathered in this square feel both angry and under siege.
As the cortege was halted by the grieving crowds, the murdered man's father, Amin Gemayel, a former president of Lebanon, agreed to speak to me.
Our only hope that this assassination should be the last one. And we need the support of the international community, mainly for the Security Council, as soon as possible.
Listening to the funeral service, the widow of Pierre Gemayel could not contain her grief. As the Christian mourners returned home, trouble broke out in a Muslim area. The army turned out in force after cars carrying Christians were stoned. As Pierre Gemayel was buried, local people fired shots in salute. But most Lebanese are still praying that the hatreds can be contained. There is little appetite here for another civil war, but there is also no sign of the reconciliation and compromise that could prevent it. Julian Mannion, ITV News, Beirut.
Let's get some more of tonight's news now, and it's being claimed that millions of pensioners are at risk because of problems with the NHS's flu vaccination campaign. A new report claims that GPs' surgeries are running short of the vaccine, which has meant vulnerable people being turned away. The number having the jab is down by a third this year. Michael Shields, the Liverpool football fan jailed for 10 years in Bulgaria, has been released to serve the rest of his sentence in Britain. The court there convicted him of attacking a local barman with a paving slab. The European Court today ensured the survival of the cross-channel booze cruise. The court turned down a move which would have allowed Britons to buy cheap cigarettes and alcohol directly over the internet from countries where they are cheaper. And a survey has found that more people in the United Kingdom have taken cocaine than in any other EU country. 6.5% of British adults say they've taken the drug. Around 150 people die from cocaine abuse every year. They ran out of bullets while taking on the Taliban and had to borrow ammunition from the Americans and the Canadians. Even the Ministry of Defence accepts that. Now British paratroopers say the army bought inferior replacement rounds for their machine guns, making them hard to fire in the heat of battle and putting the paras in danger. Juliette Bremner reports.
Desperate moments for two British soldiers. Under fire from the Taliban, they try to feed another round of bullets into their Browning machine gun, but it jams. One shot at a time is all they can get from a weapon that's supposed to fire hundreds of bullets every minute. This video was posted anonymously on the internet, but it's thought to come from an angry, frustrated soldier. The failure's being blamed on cheap ammunition bought from Pakistan when their own supplies ran out.
Information we've heard from other sources suggests that this isn't the first time that this problem's happened, and it certainly was when the MOD started trying to blame the weapon and the conditions. Well, apparently when this weapon was used with other ammunition, good quality ammunition, there was no problem at all.
Troops from the 3rd Battalion, the Parachute Regiment, seen here during their tour of Afghanistan, ended up borrowing bullets from the Americans and the Canadians.
This is the 50 caliber Browning heavy machine gun. It's extremely powerful, firing on average 500 bullets a minute. But according to British soldiers, it can't cope with the cheaper imported bullets. They say that the rounds jam in this part of the mechanism. The MOD blames it on one bad batch. The soldiers say it happens all the time.
It's not the first time the MOD's come under fire for faulty equipment. The SA-80 rifle was dogged by problems involving its design and reliability. Desert squaddies found the soles of their boots melted in the intense heat of the Gulf. And the £2 billion Bowman radio system was criticised for giving off too much heat. Colonel Tim Collins, who led forces into Iraq, claims it's penny pinching that will cost lives.
If you're issuing soldiers with weapons that cannot fire and expect them to take on their enemies, then they will lose their lives. It's a direct cost-cutting result.
Soldiers do now have bullets from reliable manufacturers, but it's one more gripe about the quality of their kit. Juliette Bremner, ITV News.
Now, the big question, can they turn it round in the battle for the urn? Day 2 of the first Ashes test starts in just over an hour, and England certainly have a fight on their hands. Day 1 started badly and went downhill from there. Our sports correspondent Geraint Vincent joins us from Brisbane again tonight. So, Geraint, not a great first day for England. What's the reaction been there?
Well, Mark, if you're an English cricket fan, there aren't many things more annoying than the Australians feeling pleased with themselves, and that's exactly what they're doing this morning. Have a quick look at some of the papers. This is the Brisbane Courier. They've got the awesome Aussies, and the Sydney Morning Herald here has also got the Australian captain on the front page, and it says, "Look, England, Ricky walks on air." And I think the first question for England fans about yesterday is what happened to Steve Harmison. He started the Ashes series with that first ball, which was mildly embarrassing to say the least, scuttling off to second slip, and he never looked happy all day. He got taken off after 2 overs, and I don't think he bowled more than a dozen overs throughout the day, and he's supposed to be England's strike bowler. It then fell to Andrew Flintoff to step into the breach. He took a couple of wickets, including that of Matthew Hayden early on, but the day really belonged to the Australians, of course, and the captain Ricky Ponting, who scored that fabulous innings, 137 runs not out. He is turning into one of the legends of the game, and he's set to record all sorts of run-scoring records in this series, I'm afraid.
But a new day brings new hope, Geraint. They need an early breakthrough, don't they?
They do. They need to take wickets early on this morning to prevent Australia taking this game away from them and setting it up, well, scoring 500, 600 runs. And they're pretty confident they can do that. This is what Ashley Giles, who did manage to take a wicket yesterday, had to say about the job in hand for England this morning.
Tomorrow the boys will come out. They'll come out buzzing, and we'll be looking to pick up some early wickets. That's all we can do. This side doesn't lie down. So I'm sure we'll be back in the morning coming out fighting.
Now, even if England do manage to bat today, it is going to be a very difficult job. They're going to have a lot of runs to chase, and they'll be facing the world's best bowler, Shane Warne, who incidentally has set his best ever bowling figures here. He loves it at the Gabba in Brisbane. Back to you, Mark.
All right, Geraint, thank you very much indeed. Let's catch up on the football, and there'll be 4 British clubs in the last 32 of the UEFA Cup. Newcastle qualified for the knockout stages after coming from behind to beat Celta Vigo at St James's Park. Antoine Sibierski had drawn them level, then Stephen Taylor scored with 4 minutes to go. Rangers have qualified for the knockout stages after their 2-2 draw at Auxerre. Tottenham are also through. Dimitar Berbatov scored against his old club Bayer Leverkusen as Spurs recorded a 1-0 win in Germany. And Blackburn also go through after their 0-0 draw at Feyenoord. Still to come on the programme, Christmas cheer, the woman who's repaying Fairfax victims out of her own savings. That, plus a look at tomorrow's front pages after the news, where you are this evening.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. I'm Rachel McTavish with the latest in London tonight. First, put up with mobile masts on your roof or pay up £130,000. That's the dilemma facing a group of tenants tonight. Their landlord's already been offered the sum to install 2 masts by a mobile phone company and says he'll only change his mind if they can stump up the same amount. Here's Chris Rogers.
Residents of Wimbledon Park will soon have a new object on their skyline. Campaigners are meeting tonight to discuss last-minute tactics to stop the phone masts being erected in their street. In just a few days, 2 masts will be erected on top of this building. Residents are furious, claiming it will pose a health hazard from radiation and devalue their homes.
This is the 3rd time they've tried to put up a mast in a residential area. We've now got a petition together of over 3,000 signatures. We're taking it to Parliament next week. Our voices should be heard.
There are many more young children living in this part of London than there are in most parts of London, and it simply isn't fair to put them at potential risk.
The landlord refused to appear on camera, but he did tell London Tonight he would be happy to refuse permission for the masts to be erected on his building if the residents paid him £130,000. He says that would go towards the loss of earnings for his company from Orange. But are their concerns justified? Is it worth paying £130,000 to keep the masts out? The World Health Organization and mobile phone companies insist phone masts pose no threat to health. Ingrid Dickinson believes her son fell ill with nosebleeds and headaches because of transmitter emissions. So she set up an organisation that monitors radiation levels in communities living with a mast.
We are seeing a pattern emerging now of sleeplessness, high blood pressure, heart rhythm disturbances, cancer. We're seeing a pattern emerging around masts.
Because Wimbledon Park campaigners have chosen to believe the findings of Ingrid's organisation rather than the World Health Organization, they are now facing a huge bill if they're to keep a mast out of their patch.
Next, the survivor of the London bombings who's suing her former employers for sacking her. Natasha Gittins took 2 months off for injuries and trauma. She was fired just months after her return, with claims her work wasn't up to standard, as Liz Wickham reports.
Natasha came to lying on the pavement of Tavistock Square, staring into the park, afraid to turn and see what had happened to blow her off her feet and deafen her. It was, of course, the bus bombing of July the 7th, 2005.
I thought at first maybe a car had exploded because there was a lot of glass around.
She was treated for cuts, back injuries and hearing problems and put on tranquilizers to counter nightmares and flashbacks, but struggled back to work at James Harvard International, a recruitment company, after 10 weeks. Natasha was still in pain and unable to walk properly. Within 8 months, she was summarily sacked.
That afternoon I was called into a meeting room. There was a letter put in front of me and I was told that my services were no longer required. The reasons were poor performance. Do I have anything to say? And at the time I was so shocked. I couldn't think of anything to say.
Natasha has an employment tribunal hearing beginning on Tuesday. James Harvard International have issued the following statement. We feel that we treated her with the utmost patience and sympathy through what was a difficult time for her. We'll happily comment in more detail once imminent proceedings are complete. Natasha is now very successful in a new job, but wants her record cleared and compensation for what she sees as disability discrimination. Liz Wickham, London Tonight, Holborn.
Some news in brief now, and one person has died and another has been seriously injured after they were hit by a tube train on the Piccadilly line at Earls Court Station. The line remains disrupted, with police still at the scene. In the Commons, Leader of the House Jack Straw has warned Ken Livingstone that the government, not him, is in control of the purse strings for the Olympics. The London Mayor wants more money to help with the regeneration of the East End, but Mr Straw said the government won't be cashing any blank cheques.
One of the key decisions we made in pushing for the Olympics was that the government had to stand behind this bid. So it is the government that is making decisions about the overall cost.
And another step towards the high-tech police force. British Transport Police have taken up a new weapon that's sure to save them hours. They've now equipped their PCs with handheld computers and printers, which mean they can do any computer searches and paperwork on the beat. Now for a look at the latest weather prospects, it's over to Chrissy Reedy.
Tomorrow's looking good. London weekday weather, sponsored by Topps Tiles.
Good evening. Most of the showers should die out over the next few hours, so mostly dry tonight. As you can see, temperatures dipping to around 6 or 7 Celsius. Now, a lot of uncertainty regarding it tomorrow. First thing tomorrow morning, very cloudy, especially to the west of London. There will be some fairly light and patchy rain. And for much of the afternoon, it is going to stay grey and cloudy. Once again, light and patchy rain. Fairly breezy tomorrow, but the breeze is coming from the south, so not too cold. Top temperatures of around 12 Celsius.
London weekday weather, sponsored by Topps Tiles.
That's all from us. We're back tomorrow with bulletins in GMTV. Now it's back to Mark Austin.
Hello again. A reminder of our headlines. 6 car bombs went off in a Shiite area of Baghdad today, killing 160 people. It was the bloodiest day in the capital since the invasion of Iraq. 3 generations of the same family have been jailed for a total of 41 years for running Britain's biggest forgery operation that flooded the country with £14 million of fake notes. And up to 500,000 people attended the funeral in Beirut of Pierre Gemayel, the Lebanese cabinet minister assassinated 2 days ago. There hasn't been much to celebrate for those who put their money into the Fairpack savings scheme, but now for one group in Northern Ireland, the happy has been put back into Christmas. The agent who ran their savings club felt so responsible she's repaid them with her own money. Emma Murphy now on the Fairpack agent turned Christmas angel.
It's the Christmas they thought they'd never have, but thanks to their agent, just a few Fairpack families in Northern Ireland now have something to celebrate. Claire Street was so devastated that the money she'd collected from family and friends had been lost that she decided to pay back all £2,500 from her own savings.
I didn't really think it was that much of a big deal, to be honest. I just done what I thought was right. It was me that asked them to join, and I bragged this much about it. I thought it was fantastic. It was me who collected the money every month. And I sent it off, banked it, and we thought it was great.
Meanwhile, just a short distance away in the town of Castlewellan, another 21 families also have something to celebrate after a mystery donor delivered £6,000 to their agent to give them back their Christmas.
I was just speechless. It was unreal. It just was like something that you would read about or see in a film. Things like that just don't normally happen. People just don't turn up at your door and say, I can help you here. So he was glad to help, and I was glad that he could help. And my customers were glad, I can tell you. They They couldn't take it in. They asked how they could thank him.
So it seems for some Fairpack customers, Christmas has come early. For others, though, a holiday season without the sparkle still looms. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Time for a quick look at tomorrow's front pages. The Times has an interview with the Russian spy Alexander Litvinenko, given before he lost consciousness. He told the paper he believed it was his former bosses who wanted him dead. He said, "I want to survive just to show them." The Guardian reports on Tony Blair's plans for a new social contract, outlining what's expected from all of us in return for public services. It gives the example of a health authority offering a hip replacement only if the patient keeps their weight down. And the Telegraph reports that 1 in 5 hospital patients will end up in a mixed-sex ward. The paper says the Patients' Association is being flooded with complaints about the lack of privacy and frightening incidents. Now, just before we go, in the last few moments, it's been reported that the former Russian spy, Alexander Litvinenko, has died. That just from the hospital, Alexander Litvinenko has died. And that is tonight's news from me and from all the team here. Good night, and thank you for watching.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by Powergen.
Hello, good evening. There's some stormy weather on the way for tomorrow night and Saturday. Daylight hours tomorrow don't look too bad. There'll be rain in places, but winds for most of us fairly light. It's during tomorrow evening and Saturday that a deep area of low pressure comes our way, bringing severe gales and some heavy rain too. More details on that in our forecasts tomorrow. For the rest of tonight, we've had strong, even gale force winds through central Scotland this evening. But as we go through the night, those gales will move away to the far north. The rest of the night, lighter winds, some rain in places, and a chilly night for some. Northern Ireland, Northern England, cold enough for a touch of ground frost. And then tomorrow, well, rain in places, the odd bright spell maybe, but relatively light winds. Temperatures just make double figures. The storms come along tomorrow night.
Positive energy from Powergen.